Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. Borneo, Exploring Tropical Asia's Hidden Treasure, presented by NatHab Expedition Leader and Naturalist, Brad Josephs. It's always a pleasure, Brad. I'm gonna hand it off to you.
Thank you so much, Kendall. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys again for continuing to log in and watch these presentations with numbers. It allows us out of work naturalists to keep our, on our game, stimulate us and keep us learning and preparing, and also help us work from home and pay the bills and stuff. So I just I'm so proud of all you guys, really, that have helped support this program and keep it going, and it's been a huge success. I've done, as you guys might know, a bunch of webinars during this period over the last year, and I've done a bunch on Borneo. And Borneo is just like all the other topics that I cover. It's a big topic. So I've done, all you need to do is go to the past recorded webinars, and I've done one that's focusing more on conservation of Borneo and the environmental issues and WWF and that sort of stuff, and the palm oil problems. And I've done one on how to specifically photograph animals at night based on how we do it. This one's mostly as the trips are beginning to gear up again and people are wondering where they're going to want to go. So we're doing more trip focused, like focusing on the itinerary and those kind of details that I've skipped over. So anyway, yeah, let's get started. I love Borneo. I traveled to Borneo in the early 2000s on my own, and I was an assistant to a primatologist that we explored the Indonesian region of Borneo, and to help her figure out her PhD thesis and where her location for it. So I was just kind of support for her. So traveled around and did some crazy adventures, and I've always loved Borneo. I've been reading about Borneo since I was a kid in books, and I think my dad just kind of got me interested in this mysterious island that was just the ultimate wilderness, jungle, untamed kind of place. So in order to, so now I've been guiding there since 2015. So I've gotten to know it very well, and I've truly fallen in love with the place. And anybody that's gone on this trip also truly falls in love with it, because it really is it is Asia's hidden jewel. So many people, and they don't even know what Borneo means or where it is or what it is. And they certainly haven't heard of all the crazy animals and creatures, except for the orangutan. And that's what usually brings people in. And then they can open up the big treasure chest of all the other amazing things about the culture of Borneo, the scenery, and all the other wildlife. So let's get started and talk about it. Borneo is it actually is, the oldest, or one of the world's oldest rainforests in the world, because of, the climate's changed a lot over 150 million years. But where Borneo sits, due to precipitation and temperature right on the equator, it's been a rainforest continuously for 140 million years. So that time is just time that evolution happens and relationships happen between things like the mycorrhizae and the myceliums of fungus in the soil, and pollinators and flowers, and this incredibly complex chain has gone on longer than any other rainforest in the world. So that's something that's really special. 15,000 species of flowering plants, 3,000 trees, 221 of terrestrial mammals, 720 species of birds have been recorded in Borneo, and 440 of freshwater fish. So basically that comes down to 6% of the species in the world and 1% of the area. So this is biodiversity wise, you really can't top it on Earth. So it's definitely something that's worth appreciating. The interior of Borneo is rugged, steep jungle mountains. And the highest point in Borneo is Mount Kinabalu at 14,000 feet. But it's so it's just basically the reason why some areas are so pristine, and it was so pristine for so long, is because it's so rugged. And it was just not a very hospitable place for colonization. Disease, violent indigenous tribes that did not want trespassers to come into their area, just heat and humidity. I mean, it was a hostile place. And now, unfortunately, it's not like nearly like it used to be, but there's still some pretty incredible wilderness regions and amazing biodiversity. And I think there's like 3 species a month in the interior of Borneo that are declared new every month. So it's definitely a special place. So it's made up of mountains, high mountains in the interior, and but a lot of the other areas is incredible wetlands, lowland peat forests and mangroves and river ecosystems, riverine ecosystems. And the threats, and again, I've already done a webinar that focused most on this, so I'm not going to cover that this time. But deforestation, because you have some incredibly valuable hardwood trees like ironwood, ebony, and so there's a high dollar value for the trees, and that started hundreds of years ago, even 2,000 years ago. I mean, some of the temples in China were built that were 2,000 years old or built with Borneo hardwood. So that's definitely a value. And land conversion, from after they take those high dollar species of trees out, they convert it over to something like rubber or different agriculture, rice, but mostly it's palm oil. And I talked about that in my previous webinar a lot. Climate change, you would expect if the climate average temperature changed from, went up by 3 or 4 degrees, well, it makes sense in the Arctic, it would have a big impact, hotter summers and melting permafrost and pack ice and stuff. But again, in the tropics, does it really matter if the average is 92 and now it's 96? Well, it is, because the Pacific Ocean temperatures changed a lot. And that's affecting the cycle of rainy seasons and dry seasons. And there's so many of these relationships that I mentioned earlier with the pollinators and the plants depend on these patterns of El Nino and La Nina and different rainy season events. Well, that's changing a lot, and that's creating some pretty serious problems. And then wildlife hunting and trade. I mean, you are in Asia, and so there is definitely the demand for things like you see in the lower right-hand corner, pangolins, which are used in traditional Asian medicine. And then also the pet trade. So there's definitely some serious issues. And you can see in '85, most of Borneo was just basically untamed green. And by 2010, you can see how much of it was gone. You can just look at those numbers yourself. And there's only 32% of the forest left now. But hopefully, we're that we have learned a lot from the mistakes that kind of happened in the 2000s, mostly in the 2000s, and then the mid 90s, and the palm oil demand has created some huge problems. But I think those issues have been addressed. But we still have to find value on the intact areas. And one of the things that you can do for sure, other than support WWF, which is a heavy hitter in Borneo rainforest conservation at the level of the political level, and everything else, is to go appreciate it yourself and support the locals, and show their governments that you're willing to go down to Borneo and spend your money because you want to see intact rainforest. And once that's gone, you're not going to go there anymore. So that's a pretty impactful thing that's happening. So Borneo is the 3rd largest island in the world, and it's made up of 3 countries. 75% of it is Indonesia, and that is referred to as Kalimantan. That's the state of Indonesia that's part of Borneo. And then you have this little tiny country called Brunei, which makes up just like 1% of Borneo or less. And it's a teeny country, very wealthy because they have offshore oil. And then the rest of it, that 25%, is Malaysian Borneo, which is just this third right here, made up into 2 states called Sarawak and Sabah. Well, we begin our trip here. You see my mouse circling in Sarawak, and that's where we meet. Everybody flies and gets picked up at the airport in Kuching. Kuching's a gorgeous city. It's 500,000 people. It's very charming. Culturally, it's exceptional. Cullen, it's famous for food. I've had some of the greatest meals I've ever had in my life in Kuching. And it's a place where what really strikes me the most after getting to know this beautiful city so much is how people get along, the different diversities. I mean, so Malaysia is a Muslim country, but there's also many other religions and also indigenous people that live there, and everybody seems to just get along fine. And I think it's a very peaceful city, the high quality of life, and it's got a really unique, exotic Asian flavor to it. I love Kuching. I could be very happy living there, to be honest. Kuching in Malay means cat, and there's a couple reasons why they named it Kuching. One of them is because it was a seafood port city, and there was lots of sort of stray cats eating that seafood at the markets, like the fish that they threw out. But also there's a special fruit called mata Kuching, which is a fruit that grew heavily in the Kuching area. You cut it open, it looks like the cat's eye. So it's one of those reasons, but it's the cat city. And so for cat lovers, it's pretty cool because there's about 10 different sort of monuments to cats in Kuching. So it's just a quirky little interesting thing. And there's Kuching right there in the state of Sarawak. Well, the big draw to this trip that gets most people's attention is the flagship species of Borneo, is the orangutan. There's 104,700 orangutans as of 2017 that live in Borneo, and then over in the Indonesia, and they have another about 7,000 species. I'm sorry, 7,000 individuals. But Borneo's got the vast majority, and it's this the Bornean orangutan. So what we do, the first thing we do is we go over to get up close and personal, and really start to just get that orangutan fix. Now these orangutans that we visit in the beginning of the trip are in a place that they're semi-wild. It's a totally wild forest reserve. But over the years, when orangutans were rescued, say there was maybe a logging operation, and orangutans lost their habitat, well, they would get put into this forest reserve. Or if they were caught basically and used in the illegal pet trade, those illegal pets would be captured and then put into this reserve. So they give supplemental feeding platforms and provide food twice a day. And so they kind of lose their fear of people. So it provides a good place to view orangutan. And when I say orangutan, it's orangutan. There's no G on the end. It's not tang. And it actually upsets the locals a lot because orang utan, it means man of the forest. So you're basically mispronouncing the word. So it's orang utan, tan. And this is a big male. And when we go to this sanctuary called Selingan, I think it's by far the best place that I've gotten images of these monster males. You see these big cheek phalanges. That's something that only the dominant males will get. And they get stimulated and they grow when there's no other dominant male there. So usually a dominant male will have its pick of the females, and he's dominant, and he does these long calls, like roar in the forest, and the presence of a dominant male will make the other males less dominant, and they won't develop these cheek phalanges until there's an open window. So it's pretty cool. I could go into a lot more about orangutans, but these guys are could be 200, 220 pounds. Likely, it's hard to measure, but 10 times the strength of a human. So they're just beasts, and we get up close and personal to these just monsters. Orangutans are very aloof compared to other of the great apes, but it doesn't mean they're not just as smart. In fact, a lot of primatologists believe that orangutans may be the smartest of the great apes, and they share 97% of our DNA. So Selingan's a great time for us to go and get introduced after we have our sort of welcome lunch, and then we spend the afternoon there, and we get the big males. I've gotten some of the best photo ops of the babies, moms and babies. Like this family was fantastic. It's a mom and a baby, and then it's her 8-year-old a baby that normally would be on its own, but this mom lets lets the siblings interact, which is really cool and unusual. Orangutans will, when they reproduce, they only reproduce, she'll only have almost always just one, almost always, and once every 8 years. So that's the slowest, that's the longest interval between births of any animal in the world. So the reproduction rate's very, very low. So that takes that mother 8 years until she's raised that baby, taught her all the tools she needs to live in the rainforest, to where she wants to go ahead and have another baby. So yeah, really cool. We have good family interactions and just great photo ops. And it's a place. I mean, we will see a wild orangutans in the wilderness later in the trip, but to be able to get up close and personal to the animal, really, that most people have booked this trip to see, is a great way to start. And the next day we head out to a marine national park that's accessible only by small boat, and we just have a full day just exploring this area. It's not as wild and remote as other places that we go later in the trip, but it's an easy, great way to acclimate and start seeing some of the really amazing animals such as the proboscis monkey. So it's kind of a famous park to see proboscis monkeys, and they're all very habituated to people. They don't mind. They're not afraid of people there. And just check out that huge nose. But the proboscis monkey will pop up several times in the rest of this trip. And they're pretty quirky. They got a big old pot belly because they eat leaves. They don't eat fruits. I mean, they have a specialized stomach, kind of like a cow, that can digest the foliage that other primates like us would never be able to survive on, because they got a bigger room and they've got microbes in their stomach that help break down the cellulose or structural sugars in the plant material. So they got a big old pot belly, not because they're fat, just because that's a specialized stomach to eat low quality food that's found along the coast and the mangrove areas. The males have a giant nose because the females find it very attractive, and there's no other real explanation other than that. And the males basically always have the appearance of being excited, if you know what I mean, and they sweat out of that part of their body that's thought to help them get rid of some of the salt they have in their food, because they live in a salty mangrove environment. So anyway, pretty cool. But we see other primates like the long-tailed macaque, also called a crab-eating macaque, the silver langur, which is amazing if we can get it where we have a baby, because the babies are born bright orange. It's thought maybe that it's easier for the parents to find that baby quickly in case of a predator to escape, rather than it be camouflaged and they don't know where it is. The Bornean Bearded Pig, which is the coolest wild boar in the world. Look at the mustache and the beard on this guy. It's a protection for going through these, really thorny forests. Really amazing animals. But yeah, they're just walking all over the place. They're not afraid of people at all. Beautiful limestone cliffs that I've never seen anything like it in my life. I mean, I've got so many pictures. I'll just show you this one, but they're kind of battered by storms, and you get pebbles in there, and you have these crazy oxidation colors in the sandstone, which is fantastic. So one of the things about the Borneo forest that I'll just hit on lightly is that this is a picture of the Amazon. It's not my picture, that's why it's just something off the web, but look at the canopy in the Amazon. It's a very uniform. All the height of the trees is all pretty much the same. Now, for reasons that I can't really explain, Borneo Rainforest is characterized by a very uneven canopy. So you have these emergent trees that grow far, far above other trees. Well, in the tropics, because all the light that happens at the canopy, that's where you get all the fruits and edible leaves, and so a lot of the action happens at the top of the canopy. If you're an arboreal animal, in the Amazon, you could just jump from or climb from branch to branch because the level's all the same. But in Borneo, it's a very uneven canopy. And so you would have to climb all the way down to the ground and walk, and then climb back up the tree, and you expose yourself to ground predators, which if you're an arboreal animal, you're not going to be, the best at evading. So there's so many animals in Borneo that are gliders. So this is a flying lizard. And if you can see, we see them flying around, but it's impossible for me to try to, because to try to capture one in flight. They're just too fast. But it's really cool to see one of these guys just fly in off of a 30-yard jump from one tree to the other. And the way they do that is you see these folds in the skin. Well, that will basically extend out in what's called basically they're like wings, like glider wings. So that's a pretty neat aspect. But also mammals. There's a lot of mammals in Borneo that are gliders. Now this is the kalugo, or flying lemur, that we almost always find in this national park called Bako. And this is the gliding membrane that I showed you that the lizard had. Well, just like a flying squirrel, which I'll talk about later, they have this huge flap skin, bigger for its size than any other gliding mammal or animal in the world. So it is the ultimate glider, and I've seen them at night gliding. So they're nocturnal, and then they glide around in the canopy and go for the trees that they want. They like to eat the sap. They chew a little bit of bark, and then the sap starts oozing out. That's one of their favorite foods. It's not a lemur. It's not a lemur like in Madagascar. It's a misnomer. It's its own family called Dermoptera. That's basically not really related to primates at all, but just a really bizarre creature. Here's another one. So this is just an introduction on the second day of the trip of just like all these crazy animals. We always find these amazing Bornean vipers, and they are poisonous, but they're so camouflaged it's almost impossible to see them. They have a lot of confidence in their camouflage, and so they basically don't move, and you can get very close to them and get amazing pictures. But just so many beautiful things. And you got mud skippers, which is they basically, their gills can get water, and then they keep flushing that water. They aerate that water with oxygen. So basically, it's a fish that can go out on land and be able to survive. And I think very similar to when a human takes on a tank of air and goes underwater to scuba dive. It's the same thing, it's just in reverse. But yeah, so we see these really amazing mud skippers. So that's kind of our time in Kuching. We settle in, get over our jet lag and relax, have some great meals, learn about this really unique area, spend a few days, hit some crazy animals and some orangutans, and then we fly over to Kota Kinabalu in Sabah, and then down to Sandakan, which is right here. And that's where we begin the rest of our trip in Sandakan. Yeah, so here's Sandakan. That's where we fly into from Kuching. And then we drive a little ways, like 20 minutes, over to Sepalak, where we spend several days. We stayed at a really beautiful resort that's got a gorgeous pond around, and again, have great meals. And it's just kind of set back in the forest. It's not an incredibly wild area. I mean, it's there's developed, and there's lots of just basically research stations and forestry stations, and it's on the road system, and it's near a town that's substantial. But there's so much wildlife there. It's really incredible, and it's just another good way to kind of relax and ease into it. Now, right next door to where we stay is Sepalak. It's another orangutan sanctuary where there are semi-wild orangutans that are not afraid of people because they come into these feeding platforms. But they're also, this sanctuary in our lodge is adjacent. It's right on the border of a huge, very wild forest reserve. So there's tons of wildlife there. It's just easy to access. And then we get a place for us to get lots of good viewing and photography opportunities of mothers and babies. I think it's one of the best places for mom and baby orangutans. They have an orangutan nursery where if they confiscate a baby orangutan that was illegally kept as a pet, they will raise that orangutan to be wild. And a lot of these orangutans eventually become so good to be in the wild, they don't even come to the feeding platforms anymore, only when they need to. So again, it's not like the other places where they're truly wild orangutans, but they definitely are living free in the jungle, and they're not afraid of people. So we get some awesome opportunities to interact with them, to see them, photograph them, and learn more about this incredible species. Now, right next door, again, like basically 5-minute walk from our resort, and right next door to the Orangutan Sanctuary is the Sun Bear Conservation Center, Bornean Sun Bear Conservation Center. I did a full webinar with this guy, and he presented sun bears and his whole project of sun bear conservation. So I can't talk too long about that. You'll have to, if you want to know more about that, just go down to the past recorded webinars and you can see it. And he is a superstar. He's a conservation rock star, and he's a really good friend of mine. We actually went to college together, but now he has started this, basically these huge jungle enclosures with raised platform walkways, so people can come, and we have a meeting with Wong. He does a presentation for us, and then we go out and we learn about the sun bear conservation story. And yeah, sun bears are amazing. Super long tongue, smallest bear in the world, the most arboreal or tree climbing loving bear in the world. And the best part is that we basically get to see this animal in its natural habitat, in the jungle, in the canopy, climbing. But really, conservation-wise, it's amazing, because these bears, the ones that become wild in these jungle enclosures, will eventually get reintroduced into the wild. And natural habitat helped sort of start this program and boost it off by raising money in order for one of the first bears to get reintroduced in the wild. And after that happened and it was successful, the whole project's really taken off. So we are, Natural Habitat is a corporate donor to this program, and something that everybody at NatHab is super proud of. So it's a great experience to go see these incredibly amazing bears that are so unique, incredible climbers. But like I said, we've already done a full webinar on sun bears, and they deserve their own 45 minutes or an hour, but I'm just going to try to run through this very complicated trip. Another really cool place that we go where we can get up close to charismatic animals, and there's a conservation story behind it, is a place called Lubbock Bay. When this region was getting cleared in the 90s for palm oil plantations, there was a plantation owner that basically noticed all these monkeys losing their habitat, and he chose to preserve a chunk of it. And to fund it, he lets visitors go, and then he pays people to go out and supplementally feed these monkeys. So again, they're not fully wild, but they live in the forest free, and we get amazing opportunities for photography. And yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I'm just sure glad that this place that there is at least some chunk of mangrove forest for these proboscis monkeys to live, instead of it being just more palm oil plantations. So yeah, for viewing, these monkeys are incredible. I mean, they're so vibrant, and where they live in a social structure that creates a lot of chaos. You have basically one kind of troop will be a harem group. There's one dominant male and all females and young. And then all the other males that are not dominant, they don't have their own harem, they gang together in what's called a bachelor group. So if you ever get where a bachelor group gets close to the harem group, basically all hell breaks loose, because all the bachelors are trying to lure females away from their master, and maybe start their own group. And then the dominant male of the harem group doesn't like that at all, so he's continually showing off in front of his girl, saying, I'm the star, like I'm the beast. You want to stay with me. So that was our visit to Sepalak, a few days. Now from there, then we drive to Sandakan, right here, and then we get on a boat, a small speedboat, and we head offshore to the Turtle Islands. And I'll show you what that looks like. So Sandakan is a really beautiful, bustling, small coastal city, seafood market, And so we spent a little time visiting this really cool town right on the mouth of the Kinabatangan River, where it dumps into the Sulu Sea, and go visit a really amazing market with lots of fruit, friendly people, incredible seafood market. And then we head out on a boat and we head out offshore to Turtle Islands, which is a tiny tropical atoll. I think it's like 10 miles offshore, so you're way out there. And it's just, when you think about going to an unspoiled tropical island, which I think, you know, a lot of people always want to see that, but in Asia they're much harder to find than they used to be. This is fantastic. They limit the number of people there. There's usually only about a total of about 30, 35 tourists there at one time. And then we just spend one night there. The accommodations aren't as luxurious as other spots, but it's okay. But just be able to go into such a different environment and ecosystem than we have, that we hit mostly on the trip in the rainforest. It's fantastic. I mean, it's just hard to leave. And so we take walks around and look for really unique coastal these island bird species, like the tabon scrub fowl, which the Latin name for it's like a megapod, because they got huge feet. And there's a really special bird, and giant monitor lizards. Then we walk around and look at the different flora and birds in the area, and just enjoy being on the beach, basically, in a very unspoiled, beautiful place. And then we watch what I've seen some of the best sunsets in my life, as the sun sets over the Sulu Sea. And it's after dark. That's where we really go for is there's just so many of these green sea turtles that come every night. It's one of the most productive breeding sites for the green sea turtle in the world. Green sea turtles do live over a huge chunk of the oceans in the world, up to temperate and tropical. And so, but this place is very special and unique. And I've never been there where you didn't have, I mean, there's sometimes hundreds of these turtles every night coming to lay their eggs. And well, we get to view one laying, because the reason we're just able to watch the rangers. What they do is they will go out at night and they see these females that come in to lay their eggs in the sand on the beach. And the mortality rate for the eggs is very, very high in natural conditions. You got, I mean, in a lot of other places, not here, but you have poachers that want to take the eggs at 10 times, and turtle eggs 10 times more nutritious and fatty than a chicken egg. So humans want them. There's lots of other predators, like these monitor lizards will find a female laying eggs and just eat all the eggs at one time. So what the rangers do, and we get to watch them, is they collect the eggs as she's laying them. And once the turtle begins to lay eggs, they go into kind of a trance. And so they're not really bothered at all. They go into a trance, basically. And the ranger collects these eggs, and she doesn't know they're gone. She buries the hole, goes back to the ocean. These eggs are protected in a fenced-in nursery that's free of predators, and so your hatch survival percentage is way, way higher. I mean, she will lay between 85 and 200 of these eggs, and then that female will do it for 3 to 5 times in one season, and then she'll go off shore somewhere where she likes to eat and recover, and then a few years later she'll come back and do it again. And we often see the turtles mating in the water from the beach. But when those turtles, and then they also do measurements, they put a tag on it so they can keep track of individuals and just get a lot of really good baseline biological data for conservation. And then whichever hatchlings begin to hatch that are ready to go, after we collect the eggs, we will go get some of ones that have hatched, which they hatch 50 to 70 days later. And then we get to watch them get released in the ocean. And because, we're there and we do it at night, it severely reduces the amount of predation that happens. And so you get a much better survival rate of these little guys that go out. So yeah, it's just another really amazing conservation story, and we get to watch them work. These rangers love the turtles. It's really cool. And the next morning we get up at dawn, and all those marks in the sand are trails from females that have laid just the night before. And so there's so many turtles. And the rangers, we only are allowed to watch one laying, and then we have to go and go to bed. They will let us do once, but all night long these rangers are collecting all these clutches of turtles, and it's mind-boggling how many turtles come in at one night. And as we go out in the early morning, sometimes there will be a female that has laid eggs, like maybe like pre-dawn hours. It's still dark, and we get to see her returning to the ocean. And that's a very special experience. So, and the rangers can't get all of the eggs. Sometimes there's just too many, and so you will get natural hatchings. And we've as you're walking along, every once in a while you'll just see a little baby popping out of the sand, and we go make sure that a monitor lizard doesn't grab them, and we help them to the ocean. So from Turtle Islands National Park, we take our boat back to Sandakan, and then get on a different boat, and then we head up the Kinabatangan River into this region called Sukau. And it's touted as one of the best places in Asia to view wildlife. Incredibly diverse. It's a river area, and we do all our stuff except for some night walks. We do all of our stuff on boats and cruise up and down on boats and look for wildlife in these nipa palm and mangrove forests that are very, very rich in biodiversity. The place we stay is a new lodge, Kinabatangan's wetland resort. It's fantastic. One of the greatest places. It's just built on boardwalks in the swamp, and the rooms are immaculate and new and just super luxurious, but all surrounding you is wildlife. Like, these are just ones that I've taken around the lodge of the Bornean Bearded Pigs and the babies. I mean, it's just one thing after the other in Borneo. It's either a crazy smell or sound or a different animal or bird. It's just assaulting the senses with this diversity. But really, I think our main goal is to see the Pygmy elephants that would come down to the river along the riverbanks. They eat the bamboo and the elephant grass. And then, of course, they love water and cool off. And so this is it's not guaranteed that we see the Pygmy elephants, but I think of all the trips I've done, which I can't remember how many I've done, a bunch. I think I've only not seen these guys maybe on one trip. So you'd have to count yourself lucky to see them, but to see these guys, this tropical elephant, Pygmy elephant, it's about 2 feet shorter than an African elephant, so they're still huge. But it's just very unique for elephant lovers because it's not your typical elephant viewing in the African savannah, or in a tiger national park in India. It's very unique. They live in the jungle. They love the water. Because they live in such dense vegetation, they're much more vocal. So they're trumpeting and growling to each other all the time. So there's some interesting differences for elephant lovers. And if you love elephants, this is definitely something that you would enjoy seeing. And these Pygmy elephants bring in high demand for tourism, and that tourism allows to put a value on them. So the government and the residents, they much more dedicated to their conservation. Just a few images of these guys. Yeah, the Kinabatangan River is the second longest river in Malaysia, 350 miles long. It starts in the mountains of the interior and dumps out into the Sulu Sea. The Kinabatangan River is also a fantastic area to see truly wild Proboscis monkey troops. We have great luck. Well, we usually have good luck finding wild orangutans, especially if you get lucky enough to where there's some of these river figs that bloom and fruit along the river. These are all totally wild, just basically 15 feet away from our boat as they're feeding on these figs, and we're just floating around watching them. These are all Kinabatangan wild orangutans on the riverbanks. Pigtail macaques, another very cool primate that we see. And you never know. I mean, there's so many different species of mammals. Once we came upon a family of river otters, which is fantastic. Bird life is phenomenal, with lots of hornbills like this rhinoceros hornbill, oriental pied hornbill, Scarlet Trogon. These are all from these boat cruises that we do. And then, you know, our evening cruise, usually the sun sets, gorgeous tropical sunset. And then we'll see these beautiful sleeping kingfishers. There's a stork-billed kingfisher that really don't mind us coming up, shining a light on them, a low intensity light, just for a few minutes to get a few pictures and to enjoy the beauty, and then we leave them alone. But yeah, just everything that you would expect along the riverbank at night. The sounds of the river are fantastic, and my favorite for sure on these cruises is the Buffy fish owl. The gorgeous yellow eyes, giant saltwater crocodiles, estuarine crocodiles. Can be, you know, over 20 feet long, just monsters, like dinosaurs that we see, and they're very common in the river. So from the Kinabatangan River, we're in the middle of totally inaccessible at our lodge from the road system, but we travel upriver one morning, get to a spot on the road, and then we drive over to Lahad Datu, which is a city down here, and then we take a logging road for 2.5 hours, dirt, up into the Danam Valley, which is often said as the most pristine rainforest, undisturbed rainforest region in all of Asia. And it's massive, and it's just fantastic. It's just, you know, blanketing rainforest full of biodiversity. And the lodge there is my favorite place to stay in the world. It is the Borneo Rainforest Lodge. It is unbelievable. I mean, they've just there's no place like it in the world. I mean, it's super luxurious, but you still have a wild feel to it, surrounded by jungle. By the way, there's air conditioning, and now there's air conditioning in every place we stay. It didn't used to be that way, and it was an issue, but now every room has air conditioning. So they have canopy walkways. We can get up high and look for birds and just get a feeling of what it's like in the canopy. We take different variety of hikes, and what we do is we split the group up into a few. So we'll have a really easy walk group that just wants to walk on the easy trails, and then we'll have some more challenging hikes, such as this one that goes up to the top of a like 500-foot overlook, and people enjoy it. Get up early, and we have a great opportunity to see wild orangutans. So there's a whole team of wild orangutan researchers from a lot of studies. A lot of them originate and they're Japanese primatologists that work here, and they all know where the orangutans are. So we have a really, really good chance of seeing these guys in the jungle. Like this one, I was on the porch of my cabin, and I looked out, and there was an orangutan 10 feet off my porch, just chilling out, eating some banana tree that was growing kind of off my porch. So I got my group together, and we basically just watched this fantastic male orangutan. Totally cool with people. So I mean, this is just like right around the lodge. So I just love staying in places that have the wildlife is just right outside your window. And in the morning, we go out, and one of our top things that we want to get a look at is the very elusive gray gibbon, which is a brachiator. They swing. They don't jump like a proboscis monkey with these huge legs. Orangutans mostly will grab a branch and just let the weight of themselves lean the tree over to the next tree. Gibbons are the fastest of all the primates. They are a great ape as well, because they basically use these long arms and specialized shoulders to swing from tree to tree, and they can cover ground like no other animal in the rainforest there. So they're a tough one to see, but we hear them all the time. And if you can hear them, you can try to locate them and get lucky, like we've done here. And I'm just gonna, this is the beautiful magical sound of the gibbon. When you hear that sound, you know you're in some very intact rainforest. So yeah, we're there with local guides that know the area very well. Other primates include the red langur or red leaf monkey, same thing. I took this from the outdoor restaurant of the lodge. I mean, there's trees. It's because it's second story, and these monkeys will just hang right around the lodge. You get some fantastic opportunities. Beautiful, beautiful primates with almost like an ET face. And then birds, yeah, I mean, I could go all day long and show you hundreds of pictures of birds like this, but this is a Scarlet Trogon. Fantastic crested fireback, which is, yeah, I mean, and again, most of these pictures are just within a 10 or 15 minute walk on easy trails from the lodge. I mean, you're just in it. And then as the sun begins to set, we know we're giant flying squirrels, the red giant flying squirrels, have holes and will emerge at dusk. And then we watch them as they begin their night of gliding around the canopy, looking for their favorite plants to eat, you know, young leaves, flowers, things like that. So, and these guys are huge and they just sail. And I mean, it's incredible. Like when the group sees one of these guys glide for the first time, it's just, it's like when you show somebody an amazing, it's never seen the aurora borealis before. Like when they finally come out and start rocking, they're just like, oh my God. I mean, it's that kind of experience, to be honest. I mean, this is stuff that people want to go see the orangutans. They have no idea that they're going to see these giant flying squirrels gliding through the canopy. And then as it gets dark, you get those bizarre, eerie sounds of the rainforest. And Borneo Rainforest sounds by far the best of any rainforest that I heard of, because of these crazy cicadas that come out, especially right around dusk. Magic place. Hard to get a picture of one because it's low light conditions, but you can see these guys jumping. Other crazy stuff that we see as it's dark is like such as the slow loris, which is a primate. It's the most primitive primate. It has incredibly good night vision because it has what's called a tapetum lucidum, which is a reflective layer in the eye. So if you shine your light at night, it's the only primate that actually will shine like a red eyes, like, you know, say dogs and cats will do. These guys are the only venomous primate. They have poison glands in their elbows, which they will lick, mix with saliva, and activates the poison. So then they can, basically, their bite is poisonous. And if they have a baby that they don't want to get preyed upon, they will just lick the baby with this poison. But I do have to say, it's sad because the lorises are they're slow, non-confrontational animals, and they're easy to put into a cage, and they're very, very cute. So sadly, people catch them, and then social media really has kind of boosted this. Like, look at me with my loris when they're on the beach in Thailand or Vietnam or something, and somebody says, if you pay me $10, you can hold my loris and get your pictures, and they post it, and then that's really boosted the illegal pet trade. So this is just something that I just always want to show people, like, this is not okay. The illegal pet trade in Asia is really bad, and things like this on Instagram, where people are posting these things, is really gotten all this stuff a lot worse. The Western tarsier, which also, amazingly enough, is a primate, but it doesn't have a tapetum lucidum in the eye, so it just has giant pupils. And it jumps around the canopy, going after cicadas and lizards, different things like that. It's very predatory, but it's a primate. It's tiny and huge legs for its body size, that can just jump incredible distances. I've seen them skip across the canopy, and it's just like you can't even believe it. And then these huge eyes and ears. They can rotate their head all the way to the back. So basically they can look behind them, which is pretty crazy as well. And they have suction cups on their fingertips so that they can stick to the branches and trunks of trees. So this is a really amazing animal that we hope to see on our night walks in the Danum Valley. And then again, this is a colugo that we found at night, the flying lemur. But then the baby had a baby poking out looking at us. So that was a pretty awesome highlight. Other mammals that we see on these night walks and night drives, the Malay civet, gorgeous, beautiful civet. Masked palm civet up in the trees. Malay badger. There's several different kinds of small deer species. And there are a number of different wildcats that we have the chance to see. This is my best picture of one of those cats. I'm trying to keep under my time limit. This is a leopard cat that we got as we were just walking down the forest road at night, and wasn't afraid of us. And then nighttime birds as well, like this Oriental bay owl. Fantastic. Beautiful, beautiful, really cool. Everything's bizarre. Everything's another planet. They're actually in the canopy after it rains. Crabs, even though you're 50, 60, 100 feet up in the trees, crabs will begin to emerge out of the trunks of some of these trees and crawl along the leaves. Crabs in the tops of the trees. And then you have awesome frogs. And that's one of my favorite things. And I did my webinar that I did just about a month ago, a little less. But yeah, so there's an amazing frog, such as this is a harlequin flying frog. Now you look at the webs on the feet, that's not for swimming. This isn't my picture. Somebody did it in some kind of a studio or something, but they use those huge web feet as gliders. So like a flying squirrel's got flaps on the skin that connect at the feet, and like the colugo, they basically use their feet as parachutes. This is the Wallace's flying frog. This is the cinnamon frog. The horn frog. So it's just, you know, that and then this is the same green viper that I showed earlier, but just the Oriental vine snake. Red-sided keelback. This one hunts in the frog ponds that we go visit to look at the frogs. Another harlequin flying frog. Harlequin flying frog. Yeah, so I did a webinar recently on photographing at night in Borneo and how to do it. And so that's one that you can go look at the past recordings, and I talk much more about how we get these shots. And the David Bowie huntsman spider. It was described by an entomologist who thought the face of the spider kind of looked like David Bowie when one of his masks. Lantern bug, the most beautiful bug in my opinion on Earth. So I mean, it's just so much. And then it's the hour now. We finish our trip. We go from Lahad Datu back to that town, and then we fly to Kota Kinabalu, which is a gorgeous tropical city famous for seafood and this ancient Chinese Borneo culture, and also famous for beautiful sunsets. We have a great night there, a great farewell dinner. Sometimes people will stick around for a couple more days and enjoy this town and some of the other activities like snorkeling and different stuff like that. But it's sort of a tropical paradise city. And then again, I'm just going to run through. So yeah, so here's Kota Kinabalu. So we basically, after Danum Valley, which is here, we drive the logging road back to Lahad Datu over here, and then we fly to Kota Kinabalu, which is a very, very easy city to get in and out of. As far as the airport, they have lots of international flights, and that is where we say goodbye. And I just wanted to throw this in. I don't know why, because I said it on my last webinars, and it's pretty good. For anybody traveling in the tropics, This is my favorite piece of gear. It's a dry bag backpack, and you seal it up, and it's dry. So if you get caught in a torrential downpour, you don't need to worry about it. If you're yeah, it just keeps all your stuff dry. If you want to look at more of my stuff, I have a blog that I probably, with all your questions, we probably can't answer them all today, but within a week, probably I will answer all the questions on my blog. And it will also, I will post recordings of this webinar and then also the related Borneo webinars that I've done. So if you're really into Borneo and you want that, it's great. You can look at all the questions everybody's asked with my answers, and then you can just go ahead without having to search around through the website. Just here's all my Borneo recorded webinars. And my blog is alaskabearsandwolves.com. And to the right's my Instagram. It's Brad Joseph's Photos. Got lots of pictures of bears from all over the world and different places that I guide. You might enjoy that. It's where I post my best photography stuff. And that is it, Kendall. Look at that. 1 minute off.
Yeah. Great job. Record time. Thank you, Brad. We've got some good questions for you. And I just want to remind everyone who's watching, if you have a question for Brad today, you can submit those in your control panel under the questions field. Okay, first questions are all about the trip. There are a few people wondering what level of physicality is required, how much walking is required on this trip?
Actually, you know, there's not very much walking that's mandatory. That we do walks, but we are the only place that we actually do, there's the opportunity to do some rigorous walking, is in the Danum Valley, which is where this picture was. And we always allow people to split the group. You know, we split up into several different ones, and so everybody kind of does the walk of their choice. And so, yeah, I mean, it's definitely good to be able to do some walking, but only the real difficult ones are optional, I guess. But you have to be travel hardy, and I think that the best thing is you need to be able to deal in temperatures that you would expect if you went to, say, southern Texas, Louisiana, or Florida in the summer. It's hot and humid. And so people that cannot deal with humidity and heat are going to have a more difficult time. But most people are fine with it. But I think that's what it is. And it's also like, you know, this was a complicated trip. We were go, go, go. We always take, when we're staying at these places like Kinabatangan Resort or Danum Valley, everywhere we stay, we always take a few hours in the heat of the day for a nap time and a rest. And so it's just like people that don't mind getting up really early in the morning and then coming back and taking a nap, eating lunch, taking a nap, and then going back out in the evening. So you'd have to be travel hardy and then be able to tolerate tropical heat and humidity like you would anywhere in the tropics. But as far as, it's not like the gorilla trips where you may have to hike for 4 or 5 or 6 miles if you want to see the gorillas. Most of the wildlife is pretty easily accessible. But people that are more active, we try to provide options for that. Okay, that's it.
Okay. And when's the best time to go to Borneo?
Any of the trip windows that we offer are equally good. There's not a better time. We pick the 2 times that are both the drier periods. We don't pick the rainy season time. So any of those times in the like late summer, early fall, and then kind of the late spring, those are the best windows to go. So we only book our trips or windows during the prime times.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Someone was wondering how many orangutan sanctuaries there are in Borneo.
Well, let's see. As far as so there's 2 that we visit. There's a few more in Indonesia, a few more, but those would be the kind of the semi-wild ones where they're getting them back into the wild. And then as far as basically the wild orangutans that live in all the other protected areas, there's I don't know, like somewhere around 100 probably places that are wildlife resort, refuges that cater to orangutan conservation.
Mm-hmm. And for photographers who want to do this trip, what lenses do you recommend bringing?
I would say the telephoto lenses are going to be your best bet. I think a 100 to 400 would be probably most useful, and you definitely could do well with a bigger lens. But I think 100 to 400 or a 70 to 300 would be fine. As far as the night photography goes, it's about having a fast lens, so like a low aperture lens. Like I got my best stuff with a 70 to 200 2.8 because you can gather a lot of light for those. Because we don't blast those animals and creatures with super high powered lights, so it's better to have one that's a little better for low light conditions. But if it was me, I mean, I think my 100 to 400 and if I had a 70 to 200 2.8 for nighttime, that would probably be the best. I don't use my wide angle very often.
So you really piqued people's curiosity about the cuisine on this trip. Can you talk a little bit about what they can expect?
Yeah, so it's just a really, really unique blend of Borneo cuisine with local stuff, but also in some of the areas it's mixed with this 500-year-old Chinese culture. So you get some a lot of influence from Chinese cooking. But me spending so much time in China, I can tell a huge difference, and I appreciate them both. But so I think, but at the lodges we usually have buffets, and we have really good chefs, and so there'll be just lots of vegetables, lots of chicken dishes with vegetables and sauce, and some fish sometimes, or in the coastal areas, more fish, kind of local vegetables that like these wild ferns and things that we eat. So it's just one of these. It's to me, my wife is a chef, and so I've become much more appreciative of cuisine and around the world, and I find it very unique. And so some of the meals we have, like especially in Kuching, we go to a local cuisine restaurant that's run by the indigenous people, and it's some of the best meals I eat basically through the whole year. There's virtually no pork unless you go to a Chinese restaurant with Chinese love pork, but all the places that we go are influenced enough by Muslims that there's no pork. So I guess that's it.
Is there a malaria concern in Borneo, and how bad are the mosquitoes?
The mosquitoes aren't bad at all. Technically, I have to tell you to go see your doctor. But I've never take, but you have to talk to your doctor and make your own decision. My decision, based on my local knowledge of malaria there, I do not ever take malaria medication. Because the places that we visit, they don't have it. The Malaysian government is really on top of things, and when there's a malaria outbreak, it's just not really in the areas that we go to. If there was, we would hear about it. So I guess if you want, a lot of times people will bring it, and then I will have a candid conversation and say, you need to make your own choice based upon what your doctor said, but I never take it. And so there's just almost no malaria at all. There's some down in the Indonesian parts and the agricultural parts, and that's kind of where malaria sort of thrives, in these really undeveloped places that are not regulated by a strong government. But in the places that we visit, there's nothing. And the mosquitoes, we have to be, they only come out in the evening and the night, and they're easy to deter. They're the Adelis mosquitoes. And they're just very easy, just a long sleeve shirt, long sleeve pants in the evening and at nighttime. A little bit of insect repellent is no problem, and they don't go into our rooms. So as far as a problem, mosquitoes are so far down the line on this trip that it's not even almost worth worrying about.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to call up there with questions, and just want to reiterate for our audience that you are going to do a blog post answering all of the questions that we didn't get to today. So keep an eye out for that. Brad, I'm going to turn it back over to you for closing comments.
Great. Thank you guys again. I think that Borneo is an incredible place, and that comes from 100% of everybody that's ever gone on this trip. And mostly it's just about these hidden surprises that they weren't expecting to see, when really all they were trying to do was check off seeing orangutans on their bucket list. And then we just opened the treasure chest to this wonderful tropical jewel. And just like, you know, a lot of other places that we go, our presence there bringing tourists is a direct contributor to putting value on the intact spots in the wildlife. So you can always feel good that you've maybe done the best that you can do by just going on this trip and learning about it. And then it's just fantastic. So hey, thanks guys again. I really appreciate it. I know there's a lot of things you can look at and watch, and it's the middle of the day, but the fact that I have 300-400 people that want to hear me talk and show my pictures makes me feel really good and keeps me motivated. So thank you guys.
Thanks again, Brad. This was wonderful. It's such a beautiful, unique place. So it's wonderful to see your photos and live the trip through you today. So thank you so much for taking the time to present. And I'd also like to thank everyone who tuned in. Be sure to join us tomorrow for our next Daily Dose of Nature. We did record today's presentation, and we'll have the replay available on our website soon. And with that, I'll conclude the webinar. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.